Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a seriously mind-bending philosophy from author Xu Feng. We're going to explore how twisting our perspective can literally turn the impossible right into reality. We often feel completely boxed in by what we consider common sense. But what if the key to unlocking the universe's greatest mysteries is simply flipping our thinking completely upside down? Let's dive in.
Okay, here's our roadmap. We're starting small with an ant on a piece of paper, moving through culture and physics, escalating all the way to the esoteric frontier, and then grounding it all in the 180-degree slip. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the Mobius puzzle, crossing the uncrossable. All right, picture this. You place an ant on the front side of a standard two-sided piece of paper. Now, here is the rule. The ant is absolutely not allowed to cross over the edge of the paper, and it definitely cannot bite a hole through the material. Under the rigid rules of conventional thinking, how can it possibly reach the other side? Well, conventional logic screams that this is absolutely impossible, right? The front is the front, the back is the back, and that barrier is absolute. But German mathematician August Ferdinand Mobius completely bypassed this supposedly impossible rule. His solution was just beautifully simple. You just twist one end of the paper exactly 180 degrees and stick it to the other end. Suddenly, the front and the back become a single continuous surface. The ant can now freely crawl anywhere without ever crossing an edge. Xu Feng uses this Mobius strip as the ultimate physical manifestation of unconventional thinking. What seems completely impossible under normal rules becomes effortlessly easy when you just change the geometry of the problem. Moving right along to Section 2, Culture and Habit, reversing the norm. Now, what's really interesting is that Xu Feng defines this kind of unconventional thinking as a direct paradox, a 180-degree reversal of our deeply ingrained daily habits. He illustrates this using some really cool folklore, specifically the story of Empress Wu Zetian from Flowers in the Mirror. So, convention dictates that in the freezing winter, only winter plums are going to blossom, while everything else just dies back. But the Empress supposedly defied the strict rules of nature entirely. She ordered all the flowers to blossom overnight without waiting for the spring wind. And the result? The gardens bloomed in full spring glory in the dead of winter, with the stubborn exception of peonies. It's a fantastic, poetic example of demanding the impossible against the established norm. But hey, we don't need magic to see this in action, do we? We actually see this 180-degree flip in everyday culture. Take the standard British and American mailing address format. It starts from the smallest, most specific detail, the house number, and expands all the way out to the country. Now, compare that to the Chinese format, which does the exact opposite. It starts with the massive country and narrows down step by step to the specific house number. Both of these are perfectly logical to the people who use them, yet they are literal exact opposites of one another. And this brilliantly highlights how deeply subjective our common sense really is. Just look at how different cultures handle the ultimate human experience, death. In a lot of cultures, the conventional way to express sorrow is through crying and wearing black. But in other nations, people actually use laughter to express their sorrow. And wearing white is considered the ultimate sign of respect. So what seems incredibly unnatural, or even totally contrary to common sense in one nation, is the absolute standard in another. Which brings us to Section 3, Rethinking Physics, Breaking the Scientific Rules. So, if cultural conventions are just restrictive habits, breaking conventions is exactly how human science physically advances. Think about it. The conventional view used to be that space was an absolute rigid box. But modern, unconventional reality shows us that space-time actually curves. Common sense used to say that only super light things like chicken feathers could fly. Yet today, 10-ton blocks of iron, airplanes, soar right through the sky. We even used to think numbers were just simple integer ratios, until the confusing, totally unconventional reality of irrational and imaginary numbers was discovered. Throughout history, the so-called impossible consistently becomes reality the moment we shift our perspective. Xu Feng argues that advanced concepts like topology are prime examples of this. Topology can actually change the position of space, making the inside and outside of a confined area communicate seamlessly, kind of like the ant on our Mobius strip. He even suggests that theoretical concepts like human invisibility, which conventional thinking completely dismisses as a pipe dream, might simply be a matter of temporarily distorting space and time in an unconventional way. Okay, buckle up for Section 4, the esoteric frontier, predicting fate and faxing humans. Right now, humanity generally believes we are stuck here on Earth. I mean, the closest habitable planets are light years away, way beyond a human lifespan.
When faced with the idea of humans instantly escaping the limits of Earth to reach distant stars, our conventional brains immediately scream, impossible, absolutely impossible. However, Shufeng impartially challenges these limits with a highly radical physics framework. He argues that while Einstein found the speed of light is the limit for material movement, he missed what Shufeng calls negative cosmic speed for non-material movement. He also challenges quantum mechanics, arguing that the famous uncertainty principle isn't some hard limit of the universe. It just means human intelligence hasn't mapped all the infinite cosmic forces yet. Even more radically, he posits that gravity is not universal. He believes it is generated purely by motion. Therefore, where there is no motion, there is no gravity, and absolutely no weight. Under this framework, if we view humans as mere particles in an incredibly orderly universe, the whole concept of random fate just disappears. If we could bypass our current ignorance and perfectly map every single one of the hundreds of millions of forces acting upon a human life, Shufeng claims we could perfectly predict a person's entire destiny. We're talking their prosperity, their adversity, and even the exact length of their lifespan. But he pushes the boundaries of unconventional thinking even further with a highly speculative, honestly mind-boggling question. Can't people be faxed? Can't people be cloned? If all material things are really just a matter of molecular arrangement and structure, what happens if we just transmit that structure? To solve interstellar travel, the text outlines a wild theoretical process. First, you don't actually send the physical body. Nope, you fax the human life structure and sequence across light years using that hypothetical negative cosmic speed. Next, at the destination, you endow that structure with energy, essentially cloning it. Because Shufeng argues that consciousness and memory exist purely within structure and sequence, this new energized clone is genuinely you, awakening light years away completely intact.
Furthermore, he applies this motion theory to human flight. If gravity is purely generated by motion, what happens when relative motion is exactly zero? Think about it. If two massive objects fly in the exact same direction at the exact same speed, relatively speaking, there is no motion between them. Therefore, according to Shufeng, there is no gravitational force between them either. A person suspended between these objects would become completely weightless and could fly freely without the help of any tools.
All right, let's bring it back down to Earth in Section 5, the 180-degree flip. Finding the truth. The author reminds us that the transformation from a restrictive, two-sided paper into a limitless, one-sided Mobius strip relies entirely on pure precision. The process of true unconventional thinking isn't just about being different or weird for the sake of it. It must be exactly a 180-degree flip, because there is immense danger in getting this wrong. If you flip your thinking less than 180 degrees, you haven't reached the truth. If you flip it more than 180 degrees, you've completely overshot the truth. Shufeng explicitly warns that these inexact flips create what he calls perverse theories, which just stray from reality and bring endless disaster. That precise 180-degree twist of the Mobius strip isn't just a fun magic trick. He views it as the absolute, fundamental key to understanding universal truth without falling into chaos. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with a final thought to ponder. We've gone from a tiny ant on a piece of paper to literally faxing consciousness across the galaxy, all by simply challenging the absolute rules of conventional logic. So, where is conventional thinking shackling you today? What supposedly impossible limit in your own work, your life, or your learning could you suddenly achieve if you just stepped back and flipped your perspective exactly 180 degrees? Thank you so much for exploring these fascinating ideas with me, and keep questioning the impossible.